The silk is cold. Colder than I remember. It's supposed to be the color of cream, of hope, of a promise made on a sun-drenched afternoon. But under the harsh, artificial glare of the ballroom chandeliers, it looks like bone. Stark and white and final. It's my dress. My wedding dress. And she's wearing it. Chloe, my husband's protégé. Her skin, tanned and glowing, makes the delicate lace on the bodice pop. Her hair, a cascade of honey-blonde curls, is styled almost exactly as mine was on my wedding day. She's standing next to him, my husband, Mark, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back, right where the intricate line of pearl buttons begins. My buttons. He's smiling that $1,000,000 smile, the one that sold 100 blueprints and one unsuspecting heart. My heart. The air in my lungs turns to glass shards. I can't breathe. I can't move. I'm standing in the shadows at the edge of the room, a ghost at a party celebrating my own demise. The low hum of polite conversation, the clinking of champagne flutes, the soft swell of a string quartet, it all fades into a dull, roaring static in my ears. The only thing I can see is that dress. A sacred thing. A thing I had carefully, lovingly, packed away in a sealed box with lavender and acid-free paper, a relic of a life I thought was mine. And he gave it to her. He took the most sacred symbol of our union and draped it over the architect of its destruction. A waiter drifts by, his tray laden with sparkling wine. He doesn't see me. No one does. I am invisible. My hand trembles as I lift my phone. The screen illuminates my face, pale and taut. My thumb hovers over a single name on my contact list. My finger shakes. Not yet. Not yet. I watch as Mark leans in and whispers something in Chloe's ear. She laughs, a bright, tinkling sound that cuts through the static. She throws her head back, and the light catches the diamond earrings she's wearing. My wedding gift from Mark's mother. I feel a wave of nausea, so profound I have to grip the velvet curtain beside me to stay upright. This isn't just an affair. This is an erasure. They're trying to scrub me from the narrative of my own life. And they're using my most cherished memories as the eraser. But what they don't know, what no one in this glittering room knows, is that a ghost can still haunt. A ghost can still burn the whole house down. And the fire is already lit. If you've ever felt that gut punch of betrayal, that moment where the world tilts on its axis and you're not sure which way is up, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me share these stories, and it means more than you know. Our life was built on paper. Not just any paper, but thick, expensive vellum, the kind that feels important under your fingertips. We sketched our future on it in clean, architectural lines. Our firm, Archer and Vance Designs, was our first child. I was Archer, the quiet engine, the one who could see a building in a block of empty air. Mark was Vance, the voice, the face, the one who could sell a dream with a handshake and that devastating smile. Our home, a minimalist masterpiece of glass and steel I designed myself, was a testament to our shared vision. It overlooked the city, a sprawling galaxy of lights that we felt we had a hand in creating. I remember the morning it all began to unravel, though I didn't know it then.
It was a Tuesday.
The air was crisp with the promise of autumn. I was in my home studio, the northern light spilling across the drafting table, my hands smudged with graphite. I was working on the schematics for the new waterfront development, a project that was supposed to be my masterpiece, the culmination of a decade of work. The smell of coffee and paper filled the room.
It was my sanctuary.
Mark walked in, already dressed in one of his impeccably tailored suits. He looked restless. He didn't kiss me good morning like he usually did. He just stood by the door, fidgeting with his cufflinks. "Morning," I said, my eyes still on the blueprint. "There's coffee." "Sarah, I need to ask you something," he said. His voice had a strange edge to it, a forced casualness that set my teeth on edge. I finally looked up. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," he said, too quickly. It's a little weird." He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. You know the annual Architects Benevolence Gala is next week. I nodded. It was the industry's biggest event, a night of forced smiles and strategic networking that I usually tried to avoid. Mark, of course, thrived on it. Well, he continued, pacing a little now. I was talking to a potential new client. A huge one. Kenji Tanaka. He could be our gateway into the Asian market. We're talking billions, Sarah. A legacy project. My pencil stilled. Tanaka was a legend, an eccentric billionaire with a passion for classic design. Landing him would change everything. Okay. He's the guest of honor at the gala. And I found out he has this thing. A fascination with vintage couture. Specifically, wedding gowns from our era. He sees them as a kind of architectural art form. The structure, the design. He was rambling. I waited. The gala committee is putting together a small, private exhibition for him. A bridal architecture display. And I told them we had a perfect example. A masterpiece of design. He paused, looking at me with wide, earnest eyes. I told them about your dress. I froze. My dress. It wasn't just a dress. It was a custom gown designed by a couturier who had since passed away, making it a one-of-a-kind work of art. It was layers of hand-embroidered silk organza over a corseted bodice, with a cascade of tiny, seed pearl buttons down the back. It was the physical manifestation of the happiest day of my life. My dress. I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Mark, it's packed away. It's preserved. I know, honey, I know. But think about it. It's for the firm. It's for us. We'll have it professionally handled, insured, everything. It will be the centerpiece of the exhibit. Tanaka will see it. He'll be impressed by our commitment. Our taste, it's the perfect and a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. It felt wrong. Profane, almost. To take something so personal and put it on display for a business deal. I don't know, Mark. It feels like a smart move, he finished for me, his voice smooth as silk. Sarah, this is the kind of outside-the-box thinking that puts us on the map. It shows we're not just architects, we're curators of beauty.
Please.
It would mean so much. For our future. He walked over and put his hands on my shoulders, his gaze intense. He knew my weakness. Our future. The dream we'd sketched on vellum all those years ago. Against my better judgment, against the screaming intuition in my gut, I heard myself say yes. I watched him carry the long, white preservation box out of our walk-in closet. He was so careful, holding it like a sacred artifact. I'll take care of it, he promised, kissing my forehead. I promise. The closet door clicked shut, leaving me in the sudden quiet, a strange, hollow feeling echoing in the space where the dress used to be. That was the first thread he pulled. The first of many. The days that followed were filled with a subtle, creeping chill. Mark was suddenly busier than ever, his evenings consumed by client dinners and pre-gala planning meetings. When he was home, he was distant, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen. A tight, secretive smile would play on his lips, a smile I realized I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time. Chloe's name started to pepper his conversations. Chloe has this brilliant idea for the Tanaka pitch. Chloe managed to get us a private meeting with the zoning commissioner. Chloe really understands my vision. She was his new junior architect, hired a few months ago. I'd met her once or twice. She was young, ambitious, with a hungry look in her eyes that I had mistaken for passion. Now it felt predatory. I tried to ignore the growing dread. I told myself I was being paranoid. We were under a lot of pressure. The Tanaka deal was huge. Of course he was focused. Of course he was leaning on his team. I was the one who was supposed to be his partner, but I was buried in the waterfront project. I was letting him down. I was being insecure. I gaslit myself on his behalf, a pathetic attempt to keep the beautifully designed structure of our marriage from showing its cracks. One evening, I came home late, exhausted after a grueling 16-hour day at the firm's downtown office. The house was dark, silent. I found him in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the city lights. Hey, I said softly from the doorway. Tough day. He didn't turn around. Just thinking. About the Tanaka pitch? I walked in, wanting to rub his shoulders, to close the distance that had yawned between us. Among other things, he said, his voice flat. Chloe thinks we should pivot our entire approach. Go bolder. More futuristic. She says your classicism, while beautiful, is starting to feel dated.
The word hit me like a slap.
Dated. My work. My entire design philosophy. The very foundation of the firm we built together. Dated? Mark. Our signature style is what made us. It's what Tanaka is known for appreciating. He finally turned to look at me, and his eyes were cold. Maybe he's ready for something new. Maybe we all are. Chloe has a fresh perspective. She's not tied to the old ways. The implication hung in the air between us, thick and poisonous. You're the old way. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Are you saying you want to change the pitch? Behind my back, with a junior architect. I'm saying I'm keeping our options open, he snapped, his voice rising. God, Sarah, why do you have to be so threatened all the time? Can't you see she's an asset? Or is your ego just too fragile to admit that someone else might have a good idea? Tears pricked my eyes, hot and sharp. This isn't about my ego, Mark. This is about our partnership. We're supposed to make these decisions together. Well, maybe our partnership needs a little shaking up, he muttered, turning back to the window. The conversation was over. He had dismissed me. In our home. In the life we had built. I retreated to our bedroom. The one with the floor-to-ceiling windows I had designed to let the morning sun pour in. But that night, it just felt like a glass cage. I lay in the dark, the space next to me in the bed cold and empty, and I knew. I didn't have proof. I didn't have a name or a face for the other woman yet, but I knew. The foundation was compromised. The building was coming down. The week before the gala, Mark dropped the next bomb. I was in the kitchen, sketching on a napkin, trying to solve a structural problem for the waterfront project, when he walked in, already dressed for the day. About the gala, he said, not meeting my eye as he poured himself coffee. I think it's best if I go alone. I looked up, my pen stilling. Alone?
Why?
I was planning on going. It's going to be all business, he said, waving a dismissive hand. I'll be working the room, schmoozing with Tanaka's people. You hate that stuff. You'd be bored out of your mind. It's better if I can just focus. For the firm. For the firm. His new favorite excuse. The same one he used for the dress. I don't mind, Mark, I said, my voice quiet, level. I want to be there to support you. To support us. And you can, he said, finally looking at me with that practiced, patient smile he used on difficult clients. By letting me handle this. Trust me, Sarah. It's better this way. He didn't want me there. He was actively keeping me away from the biggest night of our professional lives. The cold dread in my gut began to burn. It was a slow, steady fire of suspicion. After he left, I sat in the silent kitchen for a long time, the coffee growing cold in my mug. The napkin with my brilliant design solution was crumpled in my fist. Trust him? I didn't even know who he was anymore. That was the moment the denial shattered. The quiet, nagging voice I had been suppressing for months roared to life. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I was being played. My first move was small. I logged into our shared credit card account online. I scrolled through the statements, my heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm against my ribs. And there it was. A charge from 2 weeks ago.
Le vélo rouge à notoriously expensive, romantique restaurant.
A table for two. On a night, he told me he was working late with the accounting department. Then another. A boutique hotel on the other side of town, the Seraphine, known for its discretion. A weekend stay. A weekend, he was supposedly at a design conference in Chicago. The charges were a breadcrumb trail of his betrayal. Jewelry stores I'd never been to. Florists. Lingerie shops. It was a meticulous, expensive courtship conducted entirely in secret. My breath hitched. I felt a wave of dizziness, the screen blurring through a film of tears. but I blinked them back. Crying wouldn't help. Crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. I needed to see. I needed to know everything. Next, the phone records. It was harder, requiring me to navigate the labyrinthine customer service of our mobile provider, pretending to be his assistant. But I was persistent. An hour later, I had the call logs in my email inbox. A single number appeared over and over. Dozens of calls a day. Texts at all hours of the night. Late-night calls that lasted for hours. I typed the number into a search engine. The result came back instantly. A social media profile. Chloe Stevens. Her profile picture was a selfie. She was laughing, her head tilted to the side. She was wearing a delicate gold necklace I didn't recognize. I zoomed in. A small, architecturally styled V. For Vance. My husband's initial. My company's name. A brand he was putting on his mistress. I scrolled through her pictures, a voyeur in my own life's wreckage. There she was, laughing with friends at a wine bar. A wine bar I recognized from a credit card charge. There she was, posing on a hotel balcony, the city skyline behind her. The skyline from the Seraphine. And then I saw it, a picture posted just 3 days ago. She was in a design studio, holding up a blueprint, a triumphant smile on her face. The caption read, "Big things coming. So excited to be heading up the new waterfront project. #lead architect #my vision." The air left my body in a single, ragged gasp. The waterfront project. My masterpiece. The blueprints she was holding were mine. I could recognize my own drafting style, my specific annotations in the margins. They were stealing my work. This wasn't just an affair. This was a coup. They weren't just destroying my marriage. They were trying to destroy my career, my identity, my entire life's work. They were planning to oust me from the company I had built from the ground up with my own 2 hands. The gala.
The dress.
It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The bridal architecture exhibit was a lie. There was no exhibit. The dress wasn't for a display. It was for her. Mark was going to debut Chloe at the gala, on his arm, wearing my wedding dress, and announce her as the new face of the firm, the lead on my project. He was going to present her as his partner in every sense of the word, while I was at home, dismissed and discarded. He was going to parade my replacement in the skin of my past. The pain was a physical thing. It was a white-hot poker searing through my chest. I doubled over, my head in my hands, a strangled sob escaping my lips. The grief was immense, a tidal wave that threatened to pull me under. I let it wash over me for a minute, then 2. I let the tears fall, hot and silent, on the cold marble floor of my beautiful, empty kitchen. I mourned my marriage. I mourned the man I thought I knew. I mourned the future we had sketched on vellum. And then, something else rose up from the depths of that grief. It was cold and hard and sharp. It was rage. A pure, undiluted fury that burned away the tears and cleared my vision. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a dated classicist who could be easily archived and forgotten. They thought they could just take everything from me, and I would crumble. They had mistaken my quiet dedication for passivity, my trust for blindness. They had made a fatal miscalculation. They had forgotten who I was. I was Sarah Archer. I don't just design buildings. I understand structure. I know how to build things up, and I know exactly where the load-bearing walls are. I know how to bring them down. The war had been declared, and I was going to be the one to choose the battlefield. My first call was not to a friend, or my mother, or anyone who would offer soft words and sympathy. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted ammunition. I called Eleanor Vance. No relation to Mark, a fact she always stated with a wry, satisfied smile. Eleanor was the most feared divorce attorney in the city. They called her the Shark. She didn't just win cases. She eviscerated opponents, leaving them with nothing but legal fees and regret. Her office was stark and modern, all chrome and black leather, with a panoramic view of the courthouse. She sat behind a massive glass desk, a minimalist sculpture in a steel gray power suit. She listened to my story without interruption, her fingers steepled, her eyes sharp and assessing. I didn't cry. I laid out the facts, the timeline, the evidence I had gathered, with the same precision I would use to detail a structural analysis. The affair, the financial infidelity, the theft of my intellectual property. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice a low purr, "has made a classic mistake. He underestimated his opponent. Men like him always do. They think with their egos, and it makes them sloppy." "I don't just want a divorce, Eleanor," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the glass desk between us. "I want to dismantle him. I want to take back my company, my designs, my name. I want him to understand what he's done." "Oh, he'll understand," Eleanor assured me. "We'll get you the firm. We'll get you the house. We'll get you damages for intellectual property theft and breach of fiduciary duty. By the time we're done, he won't be able to afford a bus ticket out of town." "But," she leaned forward, her eyes gleaming, "you said you want him to understand. That's a different matter. That's not just legal. That's personal." "It's very personal," I confirmed. And then I told her about the gala, about the dress. A flicker of something, not pity, but a kind of grim appreciation, crossed her face. "The sheer audacity," she murmured. "That's biblical-level cruelty." "I don't want to be a victim in this story," I said. "I won't let them write me out. I want to be the author of the final chapter. I want the climax to happen at that gala. I want them to be standing on that stage, at the peak of their triumph, and I want it all to come crashing down around them. Publicly." Eleanor leaned back in her chair, a genuine, predatory grin now on her face. "I like you, Sarah Archer. You've got a taste for theatricality. I can work with that. We won't just serve him papers. We'll deliver a masterpiece." For the next few days, Eleanor's office became my war room. Her team of forensic accountants descended upon our shared finances, unearthing a complex web of shell corporations and hidden accounts Mark had set up to siphon money from the firm. Her investigators documented his affair with Chloe with a chillingly thorough portfolio of photographs and sworn affidavits from hotel staff. We discovered he had taken out a second mortgage on our home, my home, to fund Chloe's lavish lifestyle. The betrayal ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. Each new discovery was a fresh stab, but it also hardened my resolve. The grief was still there, a cold, heavy stone in my gut, but the rage was a fire, and I was feeding it. We drafted the divorce petition. It was a work of brutalist art, a 60-page document detailing every single transgression. It laid out the fraud, the adultery, the conspiracy to steal my life's work. It petitioned for an emergency injunction to freeze all his assets and give me sole, immediate control of the firm to prevent further damage. It was a legal kill shot. But serving it to him in a manila envelope felt anticlimactic. It wasn't enough. The punishment had to fit the crime. The symbolism had to be perfect. And the ultimate symbol was the dress. "I want to put the papers in the dress," I told Eleanor, the idea blooming in my mind, fully formed and terrible and perfect. She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "In the dress? What are you talking about?" He took the most sacred symbol of our marriage and gave it to his mistress to wear at her coronation. I explained, the words coming out in a rush. "So, I want that dress to be the instrument of his destruction. I want her to be literally clothed in his downfall." Eleanor stared at me for a beat, then she threw her head back and laughed. It was not a warm sound. It was the sound of a shark scenting blood in the water. "Oh, that is vicious. I love it. But how?" That was the part one had already figured out. I wasn't just an architect. I was a designer. I understood materials, structure, and subtlety. I found a company that specialized in printing on fabric for archival purposes. I sent them the most damning pages of the petition, the list of his financial crimes, the detailed account of his affair with Chloe, the clause demanding full control of the firm. They printed them in tiny, elegant font on whisper-thin sheets of silk charmeuse, almost identical in weight and feel to the dress's lining. Then I found a seamstress. Not just any seamstress, but a woman named Agnes, a retired theatrical costumer who had worked on Broadway for 40 years. She was a legend, known for her intricate work and her absolute discretion. I met her in her small, cluttered apartment, which smelled of chamomile tea and old fabric. I brought her the original design sketches for my dress and the fabric pages. I told her the whole story. As I spoke, her kind, wrinkled face hardened. When I was finished, she took a slow sip of her tea and looked me in the eye. "That man," she said, her voice a low growl, "is a monster. And his little tramp is worse. It will be my pleasure, my dear, to help you." For 2 days, we worked. Agnes was a genius. She showed me how to carefully unpick the original seams of the dress's lining. With the precision of a surgeon, we replaced the plain silk panels with our secret, weaponized ones. We sewed the petition into the bodice, along the boning. We layered it into the voluminous skirt, hiding it within the folds of organza. It was invisible. The dress looked exactly the same. It felt the same. But now it was a Trojan horse. Agnes even added a final, brilliant touch, a single, barely there loose thread at the neckline of the bodice. A pull tab. An invitation. While Agnes worked her magic on the physical trap, I worked with Eleanor on the digital one. We created a password-protected website. On it, we uploaded everything. Scanned copies of the fraudulent bank statements, the second mortgage documents, the investigators' report on the affair, complete with photos, sworn affidavits from former employees Mark had fired to make way for Chloe's allies, and most damningly, a side-by-side comparison of my original, dated waterfront blueprints and the new ones Chloe was claiming as her own, with expert analysis highlighting the blatant plagiarism. We compiled an email list. Every board member of our firm, our top 20 clients, the partners at our rival firms, and every major architecture and society columnist in the city. The email was drafted, the link embedded. It was a digital bomb, primed and waiting for my signal. The plan was set. All the pieces were in place. The night before the gala, Mark came home late. I was sitting in the living room in the dark, looking out at the city. He flicked on the light, startled to see me.
"Sarah,
"You're still up." "Couldn't sleep," I said, my voice calm. He came over, tried to kiss me. I turned my head, and his lips met my cheek. He sighed, a sound of performative frustration. "Are we still doing this?" "Sarah, I told you it's just a work thing. I wish you could be happy for me. For us." I looked at him, then really looked at him. At the handsome face I had loved, the face I had trusted. And I felt nothing. The love had been burned out of me. The grief had been compressed into a diamond-hard point of purpose. All I saw was a stranger, a con man who had stolen 10 years of my life. "You're right," I said, my voice soft. "I hope you have a wonderful night. I hope you get everything you deserve." He smiled, relieved. The idiot. He thought he had won.
thank you," he said.
"I knew you'd understand." He slept soundly beside me that night. I didn't sleep at all. I just lay there, listening to his breathing, and waited for the dawn. The night of the gala, I didn't go to a friend's house. I didn't hide away. I went to Eleanor's office. She had arranged for a live video feed of the event from a freelance cameraman she had on her payroll, posing as part of the press corps. The large screen on her wall showed the glittering ballroom, the crowds of people in tuxedos and gowns. It felt like watching a movie of a life I used to live. Eleanor poured 2 glasses of very expensive champagne. "To the final act," she said, handing me a glass. My hand was perfectly steady as I took it. I felt a strange zen-like calm. The time for emotion was over. This was about execution. We watched them arrive. Mark looked dashing, triumphant. And then I saw her.
"Chloe."
She stepped out of the car and the camera zoomed in. She was wearing my dress. A collective gasp went through Eleanor's office, where her top associates had gathered to witness the show. For a moment, the breath caught in my throat. Seeing it on her, in motion, was a visceral blow. She looked radiant, glowing. She looked like a bride. The image was a desecration. I took a sip of champagne, the cold bubbles a sharp contrast to the fire in my veins. She has no idea she's a dead woman walking, I murmured. Eleanor chuckled.
Poetic.
Let's get this show on the road. We watched them work the room. Mark was in his element, introducing Chloe to everyone. My brilliant new partner, he kept saying. The future of the firm, they were a unit, a power couple. They looked untouchable. I saw Kenji Tanaka, the billionaire client, greet them warmly. He admired the dress, and Chloe preened, accepting the compliment for a gown she hadn't earned, a life she had stolen. Finally, the moment came. The host of the evening invited Mark to the stage to say a few words. He walked up, Chloe on his arm. They stood in the spotlight, beaming. Thank you all for being here, Mark began, his voice smooth and confident, resonating through the ballroom. Tonight, we celebrate the future. A future of bold design, of innovation. For too long, our firm has been known for its classicism, its tradition. But tradition can be a golden cage. Tonight, I want to introduce you to the person who is going to break us out of that cage. A visionary, a talent who is going to lead Archer and Vance into a new era. My partner, Chloe Stevens. He gestured to Chloe. The room erupted in applause. Chloe curtsied slightly, a smug, triumphant smile on her face. This was her moment, the culmination of all her scheming. I looked at Eleanor. I nodded.
Now.
Eleanor spoke quietly into her phone. Go. On the screen, I saw it begin. A man in a waiter's uniform detached himself from the side of the room. He moved with a calm, deliberate purpose through the crowd, up the steps, and onto the stage. He walked right up to Mark, who was still basking in the applause, and held out a silver tray. On it was a single, crisp white envelope. Mark looked confused, annoyed at the interruption. What is this? A message for you, Mr. Vance, the man said, his voice just loud enough for the microphone to pick up. He placed the envelope in Mark's hand and melted back into the shadows. At the exact same moment, across the ballroom, a symphony of gentle chimes and vibrations began. Phones were lighting up. Heads were bent down, faces illuminated by the glow of screens. A confused murmur began to ripple through the crowd. The applause faltered, died. Mark stared at the envelope in his hand. His name was typed on the front. He looked out at the room, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face as he noticed the shifting mood.
He tore it open.
Inside was a single sheet of paper. It wasn't the petition. It was a note for me. On my laptop, I sent my own message. A single text to a single number. To Chloe. My text read, "You look beautiful in my dress. I always thought it felt like a second skin. Check the lining near your heart. You're wearing my husband's surrender." On the big screen, I saw Chloe's phone light up in her hand. I saw her read the text. A frown of confusion crossed her perfect, smug face. Then, her eyes widened in dawning comprehension and fear. Her left hand went instinctively to the bodice of the dress. Her fingers brushed against the lace. Meanwhile, Mark was reading my note. His confident smile had vanished, replaced by a mask of disbelief. "Turn around and look at your new partner," the note said. "She's wearing the rest of the story." He looked up from the paper, his eyes finding Chloe's just as her face was contorting in panic. Her fingers, fumbling at the neckline, found it. The loose thread. The little pull tab Agnes had so cleverly sewn in. Without thinking, driven by a primal, panicked instinct, she yanked it. A tiny rip, a seam giving way, and from the opening, a small corner of white fabric peeked out. Fabric that wasn't supposed to be there. On it, in cold, hard legal type, were the printed words, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Below that, his name, Mark A. Vance, respondent. And below that, her name, Chloe Stevens, correspondent. Time seemed to slow down. The silence in the ballroom was absolute, a crushing weight. Every eye, every camera phone, was now trained on the stage. Chloe stared at the piece of fabric as if it were a snake. She made a small, strangled sound. Then, she began to claw at the dress. A frantic, desperate scrabbling at the bodice. She ripped the seam open further. A larger sheet of the fabric petition unfurled, revealing the section on financial malfeasance, the list of shell corporations, the details of the second mortgage. She looked like a trapped animal, trying to tear off its own skin. "What are you doing?" Mark hissed, grabbing her arm. "It's in here," she shrieked, her voice high and thin with hysteria. "It's all in here." She tore at the skirt, and another panel of fabric came loose, this one detailing the intellectual property theft, the side-by-side comparison of my blueprints and hers. She was literally, publicly, unveiling their entire conspiracy, which she wore like a shroud. The beautiful, bone-white dress was coming apart at the seams, revealing the ugly, documented truth hidden within. The flashes from the cameras were relentless, a barrage of strobing lights. The murmuring in the crowd had turned into a roar of shocked gasps and frantic whispers. Mark stood frozen, his face ashen, a statue of public humiliation. He looked from the shredded dress to the sea of illuminated phones, and he finally understood. He hadn't just been served. He had been detonated. On the stage, Chloe collapsed into a sobbing heap of ruined silk and legal documents. My dress, my beautiful dress, was in tatters around her, a casualty of a war it had been forced to fight. But it had done its job. It had delivered the message. In Eleanor's office, we watched the chaos unfold. No one spoke. We just watched. I took another sip of my champagne. It tasted like victory. A cold, quiet, and deeply satisfying victory. The building they had tried to steal from me had been condemned, and I had been the one to push the plunger. The aftermath was swift and brutal, a perfectly executed demolition. The story was on every news site and society blog by morning. The seamstress of revenge. One headline called me. "Gown of Thorns," read another. The pictures were everywhere. Chloe, hysterical, tearing at the dress. Mark, frozen in a rictus of horror. The link to our evidence website had gone viral. The firm's board of directors convened an emergency meeting that morning. I attended via video conference from Eleanor's office. Mark was there, looking like a ghost. He didn't even try to defend himself. There was no defense. By noon, he had been unanimously voted out of the company he had co-founded. His resignation was effective immediately. He was escorted from the building by security, carrying his life in a single cardboard box. Our clients, horrified by the scale of the fraud and the public humiliation, began to call. Not to cancel contracts, but to pledge their loyalty to me. They had always known I was the talent, the soul of the firm. They were relieved the cancer, as one of them put it, had been cut out. Within a week, I had secured our entire client base and was fielding calls from new ones. The firm, my firm, was stronger than ever. Chloe vanished. She was a pariah, a professional and social leper. No firm would touch her. Her name was synonymous with plagiarism and scandal. I heard she moved back to her hometown, disgraced and broken. She had gambled everything for a shortcut to the top and had lost in the most spectacular way imaginable. The legal proceedings were a formality. With the mountain of evidence we had, Mark had no choice but to surrender completely. He signed everything Eleanor put in front of him. I got the house. I got the firm, which I immediately renamed Archer Designs. I got the majority of our assets. I got my name back. A few weeks after the gala, a large box arrived at my office. It was from Agnes, the seamstress. Inside, carefully folded and wrapped in tissue paper, was the dress, or what was left of it. She had painstakingly recovered every piece, every scrap of silk and lace. She had cleaned it and pressed it. It was still torn, a beautiful, ruined thing. In a note, she wrote, "Sometimes a thing must be broken to be remade. This dress is a warrior. It deserves a place of honor. I didn't know what to do with it. I couldn't throw it away. It was too much a part of my story now. But I couldn't keep it. Looking at it was like looking at an open wound." Months passed. The firm thrived under my sole leadership. We won the Tanaka contract. He was, as it turned out, Deeply impressed by my unconventional and decisive problem-solving skills, I moved my office into the corner suite that had once been Mark's. I redecorated, stripping away his cold, masculine aesthetic and replacing it with light, clean lines, and displays of my own awards. I was reclaiming my space, both literally and figuratively. I started to feel like myself again. Not the old me, the trusting, naive woman who had sketched her future with a man who was drawing his own secret plans. I was someone new, someone forged in the fire of betrayal. I was stronger, harder, but also, in a strange way, more free. I had learned that I could rely on myself. My talent, my intellect, my resolve, they were mine. No one could take them from me again. One rainy Saturday, I found myself in the storage room of my new office, face to face with the box containing the dress. I opened it. I lifted the ruined bodice, the silk cool against my fingers. I saw the torn lining where the fabric petition had been. It was no longer a symbol of a broken promise. It was a battle standard, a testament to my survival. I knew what I had to do. I contacted a local modern art museum. I told the curator the story. She was fascinated. 2 months later, the dress was the centerpiece of a new exhibit on feminist textiles and reclaimed narratives. It was displayed on a single mannequin in the center of a white room, dramatically lit from above. The torn pieces were artfully arranged, the hidden lining with its legal text subtly visible. It was no longer a wedding dress. It was a work of art titled The Surrender. I went to the opening by myself. I stood in front of the display for a long time, watching people's reactions. They would read the small plaque explaining the story, and then their eyes would widen as they looked at the dress with new understanding. They saw not just a ruined garment, but a story of pain, power, and reinvention. As I was about to leave, I felt a presence beside me.
It was Mark.
I hadn't seen him since the final divorce papers were signed. He looked older, diminished. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a weary stoop. "Sarah," he said, his voice quiet, raspy. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on the dress. "What do you want, Mark?" I saw it was here. I wanted to see it," he paused.
I'm sorry.
"For everything. I know it's not enough. I know it means nothing now. But I am. I was a fool. I destroyed the best thing in my life for nothing." I finally turned to look at him. I searched his face for any sign of the man I once loved. I found none. He was a stranger, a ghost from a former life. And I felt no anger.
No hatred.
I just felt a profound and liberating indifference. "Yes, you did," I said, my voice even. "You destroyed it. But I rebuilt. Better. Stronger. Without you." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there alone, staring at the beautiful, broken symbol of everything he had lost. I walked out of the museum and into the cool night air. The city lights, the ones I had helped to shape, glittered around me. My city, my firm, my life. The narrative was finally completely my own. Betrayal can either break you or forge you into something stronger. If this story found you when you needed it, please subscribe. Your presence here helps me create more stories like this one. Thank you for listening.